What if one of the world's most influential music magazines just placed SB19 right at the heart of Ppop history? And what if I told you that the same group has also achieved a Billboard milestone no Filipino act had ever reached before? This is not just another SB19 achievement story, because what we are witnessing goes far beyond awards, charts, or magazine covers. This is the journey of how SB19 evolved from overlooked dreamers into the group that major global music institutions now use as a reference point for the future of Ppop. And the more you look at their rise, the more one thing becomes impossible to ignore. This is not just success, this is cultural positioning at a global level. Because when you put their historic Billboard success together with their latest Rolling Stone Philippines cover, everything changes in how their journey is understood. SB19 is no longer simply following history. They are shaping it. Rolling Stone Philippines has officially featured SB19 on the cover of its special Ppop edition. But this wasn't just another spotlight moment. It was not casual placement or random selection. It felt intentional, almost like a statement about the direction Ppop is heading. They weren't casually mentioned, and they weren't just part of a lineup. They were placed at the very center of the entire narrative. And that detail alone changes everything, because placement is never just design, it is meaning. It is hierarchy. It is recognition of influence. Even more importantly, the publication didn't just describe them as successful performers. It called them pioneers leading a movement. Pause and think about that word. Pioneers are not artists who follow trends. They are the ones who create direction. Rolling Stone highlighted SB19 as one of the key forces actively driving an entire genre forward. That alone shows this is no longer about one viral moment or one successful era. This is about long-term cultural impact being written in real time. For decades, Rolling Stone has documented the evolution of music. Not temporary trends, but the moments that redefine industries. And now, as SB19 is officially part of that documented history, that means something very important. They are no longer just being observed, they are being archived. And archives are not for hype or popularity. Archives are for legacy. The issue doesn't only highlight SB19. It also traces the development of Ppop itself, from its early experimental stages to its present rise and future direction. And within that bigger narrative, SB19 is not just included as participants. They are used as a reference point, a living example of how the genre has transformed and expanded over time. From Go Up, their early breakthrough, people began noticing their discipline, precision, and performance quality. Then came Gento, and everything started expanding beyond expectations. The song didn't stay local. It crossed borders, reached international audiences, and brought global attention to Ppop in a way that had never happened before. But SB19 didn't stop there, because momentum only matters when it evolves. Then came Bazinga, which felt more refined, more intentional, and more powerful. Stronger production, bolder visuals, and a clear identity showed that the group was no longer experimenting. They were defining themselves. Each release was not separate. It was part of a continuous evolution. Now, everything begins to connect. Rolling Stone represents cultural influence and long-term recognition, while Billboard represents measurable global success and performance. One reflects how the industry sees you, and the other reflects how the world responds to you. And SB19 has now achieved both at the highest level. When both align, it is no longer speculation or fan discussion. It becomes recorded history. But perhaps the most important part of this story is not what SB19 has already achieved. It is what this moment unlocks going forward. Because every barrier they break creates space for other Filipino artists to rise. Every global milestone expands the reach of Ppop, and every achievement shifts what the world believes is possible. SB19 is not just building success for themselves. They are expanding the path for an entire generation after them. The impact of SB19's rise is no longer something that can be ignored or treated as just another success story in the music industry. Every achievement forces the world to pay closer attention. SB19 is not rising alone. They are carrying an entire movement with them. The way their journey is unfolding shows something much bigger than individual success. It reflects a shift in how Ppop is being seen globally. For years, it was treated as an emerging space, but now it is becoming part of serious international conversation. And SB19 is standing right at the center of that transformation. So when you bring everything together, Rolling Stone places SB19 at the center of its Ppop feature as key figures of the genre. At the same time, Bazinga reaches #1 on Billboard's global chart. One represents cultural influence. The other represents industry impact. Combined, they tell the story of a group that is no longer emerging. They are defining the era. SB19 is no longer waiting for history to recognize them. They are actively writing it. For decades, Rolling Stone has documented the evolution of music history. Not trends, not hype, history. And now SB19 is officially part of that archive. Even more interesting is what this issue focuses on. It doesn't just highlight SB19 as individuals or as a group. It explores the rise of Ppop as a whole, its past, present, and future direction. And within that bigger picture, SB19 becomes a key reference point, a symbol of how far the genre has come. That means something very important. SB19 is no longer just being celebrated for their music. They are being studied as part of the genre's evolution. But it wasn't always like this. There was a time when Ppop faced heavy doubt. Critics questioned whether it could ever grow beyond local audiences. They said it wouldn't travel. They said it couldn't compete internationally. They said it would always stay in the background of global music. SB19 heard all of that, and instead of stepping back, they pushed forward even harder. They trained relentlessly. They refined their sound through constant experimentation. They built their identity from scratch without shortcuts. And most importantly, they embraced their Filipino identity instead of hiding it. They didn't chase approval from global trends. They created something that represented who they are. And that decision changed everything. Their journey didn't explode overnight. It grew step by step. From early releases like Go Up, they began gaining attention for their discipline and performance. Then came Gento, and suddenly, the world started noticing. The song didn't just trend locally. It crossed borders, reached new audiences, and proved that Ppop could go beyond expectations. But even that wasn't the final stage, because SB19 didn't stop there. They evolved again, and that evolution led to Damn. Damn wasn't just another comeback. It was a statement. From its production to its visuals, everything felt more refined, more powerful, and more intentional. And then came the moment that changed everything. Damn debuted at #1 on Billboard's World Digital Song Sales Chart. Not top 10, not top 5, #1, right at the top. And with that, SB19 became the first Filipino act in history to reach that position. Let that sink in. The first ever, not one of many, the first. That is the kind of achievement that stays in record books permanently. It doesn't fade, it doesn't get replaced easily. It becomes part of music history itself. But the importance of this achievement goes far beyond charts and rankings. It represents something deeper. It proves that language is not a barrier to global success. It proves that Filipino artists can compete on the world stage. It proves that Ppop is no longer an emerging idea. It is now a global conversation. And perhaps most importantly, it proves that SB19 is not just part of that conversation. They are helping lead it. What makes this even more significant is that this success didn't happen by chance. It was built over years of growth. Every era contributed to the next. Go Up introduced discipline and potential. Gento expanded their reach internationally, and Damn pushed them into historic territory. Each stage wasn't separate. It was connected. It was evolution in real time. And this is where everything starts to align. Rolling Stone represents cultural influence. Billboard represents measurable success. One reflects recognition from the media and creative industry. The other reflects performance, reach, and global impact. And SB19 has now achieved both at the highest level. When two worlds meet, it creates something rare. It moves beyond fandom. It moves beyond hype. It becomes documented history. But maybe the most powerful part of this story is not what SB19 has already achieved. It's what their success now makes possible. Because every barrier they break creates space for other Filipino artists to rise. Every global recognition makes Ppop more visible to international audiences. Every milestone expands what is considered possible for the next generation. SB19 is not just climbing alone, they are building a path behind them, a path others can follow. So when you put everything together, Rolling Stone places SB19 at the center of its Ppop narrative as key figures of the genre's rise. At the same time, Damn reaches #1 on Billboard's global chart. One represents influence, the other represents impact. And together, they form a complete picture of a group that has moved beyond emergence. They are no longer rising stars. They are defining forces. SB19 is not waiting for history to recognize them anymore. They are actively writing it.